I provide therapy at juvenile hall. So that's kind of my job role. What I do not do is go into schools and lecture and steer tactics and don't do this and this and this. I know you guys all make your own choices, right? And I respect that. I'm not here to make choices for you. I'm just here to give you information. So don't try to fight me. Sometimes kids will be like, oh, but this and this and this. I'm not here to tell you what to do. It's just some information that we get from Stanford University. I'm not coming in here making anything up, okay, to scare anybody. So that's kind of my whole little speech before I start. I'm here to talk about vaping and e-cigarettes and what we know so far. When I first started this job about 4 years ago, the Juul was not out. So the Juul is this product. Does anybody know what the Juul is? Don't feel afraid to say so. You don't have to call anybody out. But this guy right here, not the cigarette, but the other product. No one else knows what the Juul is, has heard of it, seen it before? Okay, so the Juul came out 2015. So when the Juul came out, it created a big problem because young people started using it, okay? Because nobody really knew what was in these products when they first came out. So like I said, when I first started, smoking was at an all-time low for your age group. Your age group was not smoking cigarettes because you guys grew up knowing cigarettes were what?
Bad.
Yeah, we're bad, right? So sometimes when things first come out, it takes a while to understand the effects of it. So like cigarettes, believe it or not, like schools used to have smoking areas for students. Yeah. So like it was like a little space to go and smoke, like because they didn't know that it was bad for you until, you know, people started dying, research comes out. So the same thing is kind of happening with e-cigarettes. When e-cigarettes first came out, they looked like real cigarettes and the tip lit up. Has anyone ever seen those? Yeah, they like look just like a real cigarette. So people were doing that in restaurants, at work, nursing students at the college were using it because they were like, it's just water vapor, no big deal. So what we know today is very different from what we knew when it first came out. So that's why I'm here today, is just to let you know what's in it, how it's affecting people, etc. So the Juul, for those of you that don't know what the Juul is, this is kind of what it looks like. This one right here. The Fix is just basically another brand that copied the Juul's design. So the Juul, who raised their hand that they've seen one before? What does it look like if you didn't know what it was?
USB. Like a USB.
Yeah, USB. So a lot of kids, which I'm sure you've seen before, were charging them in class, no big deal, right? Like they were taking them to school, probably still do, smoking them in class, charging them on laptops in class, because they look just like a USB. So this company claims they designed it to help adult smokers quit smoking. Do adults have to hide that they are smoking?
No.
No. So they wouldn't have to make that design, right? Like they would just make it look like a normal cigarette. But this design is made for a reason, because young people need to hide that they're smoking. It took a while for adults to catch on with the Juul, to be honest with you. There's still some like school staff that don't know exactly what it is. So that's kind of why it's designed that way. It has a little pod on top, which is probably, it's probably like this big, the pod, right? What are the colors for on that cover? Does anyone know? They have different colors sometimes. What is the color?
Is it the flavor?
Yes, bingo. So yellow is typically mango flavor, okay? So basically how these work is it's the device, and then the pod is what has the nicotine or e-juice. And once that's done, you're supposed to throw it away, put a new one. I know kids refill them, you're not supposed to, but that's kind of how it works. And then again, plug it into your laptop and it charges, for those that don't know what it is. So, does anyone know what that guy is? The big one. It has another name too. Has anyone heard like box mod, paint?
Yeah,
Okay,
mod.
so those are kind of the names they go by usually by mod. It's called a mod because people make modifications to it, right? So if you have you ever seen someone blow like a really huge cloud before? Yeah, it's usually those guys, because you can make bigger clouds with that. So if you knew nothing about either of these, which would you think looks more dangerous? The big one, right? You would just think so. So they actually use two different kinds of nicotine. The Juul started using salt base, which hits your bloodstream faster and gives you a harder hit of nicotine like a cigarette would. This uses free base nicotine, so it's completely different types of nicotine they're using. This can hold 41.3 milligrams of nicotine. We'll get into how much that is. And this is usually 25, okay? So this is actually way more nicotine for you, that little guy. pods are not meant to be refilled, where this one you could refill the tank. So my point being is they made something that doesn't look dangerous, right? So a lot of kids got sucked into using the Juul because it's just a little stick you puff on essentially. So when you do smoke something and you start coughing and hacking, what is your body trying to tell you? Yeah, it is harmful, right? It's just in the body, right? So kids that say like, oh, it's just water vapor, do you think your body would be reacting that way if it was just water vapor that you're smoking? No. So that term vaping is deceiving because there's no water vapor in there. Anything that's in a heated device is going to be an aerosol. When I say aerosol, what do you think of? What like hairspray, right? This is an aerosol. Anything in a can is an aerosol. So hairspray is a good example. If I were to spray this and you walked into it, what's going to happen? Cough, right? You're going to start choking. There's a million warnings not to inhale, okay? So every single vape and e-cigarette is an aerosol device. So when people say it is just water vapor, that is not true. So even if you have something that has no nicotine, you're still breathing in an aerosol, which is not good for your lungs, okay? Can I have a volunteer?
I'm scared.
Come on, yeah.
Go, Michelle.
No questions asked, right?
Oh, that's scary.
Hello.
Estás pendejo.
Alright, do you mind if I spray your hand?
Oh.
Okay. So, you want me to do the back? Okay. So I'm going to spray her hand with hairspray. Okay, we're gonna let that sit for a minute. So, oh my god. Good job. Okay, so say I had sprayed her with water. In a minute or two, when she touches it, what is she gonna feel?
Wet.
Say it had dried. It's dried. She's not gonna feel anything, right? Her skin, it's just gonna be her skin. So when I ask her to feel this now, so go ahead and feel it. Is it sticky? Say yes. So
Yeah, it should be
but
sticky.
The hairspray sticks to your skin, right? Yeah. Yeah. So the hairspray's still there. Yes. Yeah. Right there. Yeah. It's sticky. I promise. Okay.
I promise, yeah.
So yeah. Say yes. So that is exactly how the chemicals of these products stick to your lungs. Anytime you breathe the aerosol, it just doesn't evaporate. It's going to stay in your lungs. Okay. So that you are done. Thank you so much. Do you like Mexican candy? Okay. Cool. Perfect. Thank you.
Oh, woulda, shoulda, coulda.
Alright. So sorry, I don't have a wipe for you either.
It's fine.
Okay. I use
You go to
that
the bathroom,
example
babe.
just so you could feel like aerosol particles will stick, okay? They stay with you. So that whole term water vapor, get that out of your head because it is not true, okay? So something else I want to talk to you about is how these products are packaged. Okay, so the Juul that I talked about, in 1 year they made $16 billion. Okay, 1 year.
Wow.
So if you have $16 billion, do you think you could afford a decent marketing team? Yes, so they know what they're doing when they're making their packaging. They make it a certain way for a reason. So before there were any rules or regulations, they used to not put any warning labels or anything on there. It just said 5% mango. That was it. So when you see 5% and mango together, what are you gonna think?
5% mango.
Yeah, exactly. But they're talking about the nicotine. That's what they're talking about. So a lot of these brands will only put the percentage because it sounds friendlier than the actual amount of nicotine. 5% versus 41.3 milligrams, which sounds friendlier? 5%, right? The lower number. So when they, package these products, they make them that way for a reason. Again, to look friendlier to people because are they gonna say like, hey, this is gonna kill you? No, right? They need to stop. So this, again, there's the 5%, right? This is how the Juul was packaged before they made them put warning labels on there. So there was not really much on there telling you anything about it, okay? Has anyone ever heard of the Soren? It's like a little teardrop shape. Not Novo Soren. They're not very big, right? The Soren itself is not big. It's probably like this
in my
big,
head.
okay?
I'm remembering that.
So yeah, adults, when we confiscate these, they thought it was correction tape, they thought it was whiteout, they thought it was like everything about what it was, right? And again, these products are made so that you guys could have them and didn't know. So they were pretty successful with this one. But I will get into how much nicotine each of these have, okay? Which people sometimes do not know because they use that percentage breakdown instead of saying how much is in it. Okay. cigarettes in a pack? 20. Okay, so there's your 20 cigarettes in a pack. One Juul pod. How many cigarettes? 41. So it has the same nicotine as 41 cigarettes would.
Wow.
So again, super small, that tiny thing. And again, this is research by Stanford. It's not something I'm making up. So that tiny pod that's about this big is equivalent to 41 cigarettes. Again, honestly, on their part, genius idea to make people think that it's something that's not bad for you, but in reality, that's how many cigarettes you would be smoking. Yes, it doesn't have the tar and things that regular cigarettes do, but the nicotine is there. So when kids didn't know this, right? Because I just found this out too. Research had told us it was 1 pack, but then when they researched it further, it's actually 41 cigarettes, so 2 packs, right?
Wow.
So that's a lot. So say, you know, someone, I know it gets passed around at school, someone smokes it, they don't know how much nicotine they're getting. We have had nicotine poisoning happen to kids. We have had kids smoke things that they didn't know they were smoking because people were mixing things in there. So again, my message is like, know what's going in your body and know that these facts that this does have that much nicotine should you choose to ever do it. The Fix, which is the other brand I was talking about, that is equivalent to 75 cigarettes. So it's not much bigger than the Juul, but it has even more nicotine. That teardrop, who said it's about the palm of your hand? Somebody said that? 90 is worth 90 cigarettes in of nicotine. So what that is a lot. It's a lot. So that's our concern too, is that they're not super clear about how much nicotine is in them. Kids are smoking them, getting hooked on it, getting nicotine poisoning, things like that. So I just want you to remember these. I don't know if you guys have to write anything down today, or you have questions, right? I see you have papers in front of you. Okay. Do I have, is there a
Isn't there
question?
like a substitute for nicotine though?
What was that?
Isn't there like a substitute for nicotine?
Substitute one? So some people say that it's like, do you mean like the no nicotine, where it says it doesn't have nicotine in the e-juice? So some people do say they use that, but again, you're gonna get the aerosol still, because the device itself is an aerosol, so you're still breathing in chemicals. And then those are not regulated sometimes. So when they tested those, they still had nicotine in them because they don't have regulations at this point. So they can put a lot of different things on that label, but it doesn't make it true, especially if they're coming from like overseas or China. They don't regulate it as much as they would if it was made here. Does that make sense too?
Yeah.
So that's our concern too, is some things that are just, you know, people are buying offline, or even some smoke shops, and you don't know exactly what's in it. And I know smoke shops, a lot of local ones do sell, like, to kids, reality is, you know, so that's a concern too. It's not hard to get, right? It's really not. So all of these companies, they do contain nicotine. So any of these pods will have nicotine, so don't let anyone tell you otherwise, they do have nicotine. So this is confusing to explain addiction, so I'm gonna play a short video that talks about the young brain and addiction. It's super short.
It's important to understand that everyone in the world has addictions, or rather natural addictions, to things that are good, like food, water, and sleep. These natural addictions are important for our health and survival, and without them, we would not hunger or crave the things we need to survive. Now, we aren't exactly born with these natural addictions. Our body creates them. Let's look at an example. When you bite into an apple, your brain says, yum. Your brain recognizes that this apple is good for you. It has nutrition, vitamins, and gives your body the energy it needs to survive. Whenever the brain recognizes something that's good, it releases a chemical called dopamine. Dopamine causes you to experience pleasure. It's what makes you feel good, like when biting into an apple. The brain releases this dopamine in order to teach the body that this is healthy and good for your survival, and that it should remember to do it again. Now, there are other things we do that can release the pleasurable dopamine, like playing video games, exercising, or reading a good book. However, the amount of dopamine released during these activities is less than what's released when we eat food. The brain does this so it can recognize which is more important. So if you go 2 days without reading a book, or 2 days without eating food, your body is going to crave the food over the book. As such, your brain creates what's called a hierarchy of survival, which ranks how important each of these things is to your survival.
Right here, Lee.
Now, there are some things that will not cause the release of dopamine. like eating soap
I was gonna
or punching
I didn't
yourself
see
in
it.
the face.
My bad.
The brain knows
How
that
many
these
kids
things
are
are
like, yeah,
not
give me
good,
those.
and therefore does not release the pleasurable dopamine because your brain does not want you to do it again. Now, let's look at alcohol, marijuana, tobacco, and other drugs. These are all classified carcinogens, proven to cause cancer and other fatal diseases. Now, your brain should recognize that these things are harmful to your body. However, these substances have special chemical characteristics that fool the brain into releasing dopamine, oftentimes in much greater amounts than the body has ever experienced before. Because of this, the body is fooled into thinking that these things are good and important, sometimes even more important than food, water, or sleep, and consequently hijacks the #1 spot in your survival hierarchy. So now, if you go 2 days without eating or 2 days without drinking alcohol, your body will actually crave the alcohol over the food. This is an extreme case of addiction, where the person addicted believes that they will die if they don't get it. The severity of the addiction depends on where the alcohol or drug lies within your hierarchy of survival, and can increase even with casual use. Research shows that people under the age of 21 are at the highest risk of having their survival hierarchy hijacked. Why? Because their brains are still growing and developing and are hypersensitive to false shocks of dopamine caused by these harmful substances. By 21, the brain is more fully developed and mature, and the survival hierarchy becomes more permanent and less susceptible to getting hijacked. The flip side is that once you are 21, it becomes very difficult to remove these harmful substances from your survival hierarchy. Studies show that 9 out of 10 people who currently struggle with addiction started drinking, smoking, or using before the age of 21. Understanding addiction as a preventable disease can help save millions of lives. The decision to wait until 21 could mean the difference between a life enslaved by addiction or a life full of success and accomplishment. Want to learn more? Visit us at wait21.org.
Okay, so hopefully that kind of explains how addiction works in the young brain a little bit better. So right now, the smoking age is what? Or to buy cigarettes, yeah, 21. So there was a reason behind that decision, and it's basically what was explained here. Ew, that picture's disturbing, sorry. So there was a reason behind that, in that you are less likely to become addicted to something if you are older than 21. So not saying like once you're 21 just go crazy and do everything, right? But your brain is a little more developed than it is right now because you guys are constantly in a stage of development. One more thing I will touch on too is I just wanted to talk about marijuana for a tiny bit. Okay, touchy subject, please don't try to fight me. So I'm not coming in here like anti-marijuana, but one thing I will tell you too is like I said, your brains are still growing. So the video talked about what chemical being released when you have any type of pleasure. What chemical is that? Dopamine, exactly. So, say you love playing soccer. Soccer's your thing, right? So when you play soccer and you enjoy it, you're releasing dopamine, right? A natural level. Say you're smoking weed heavily, right? You're getting a dopamine level that is not natural. It's not something we naturally reach on our own. So then when you go back to playing soccer, it's not that same amount of dopamine. It's not going to seem as pleasurable because you're throwing off those levels very early on. So again, if you're just like hell-bent on like, no, I'm going to do A, B, and C, it's my decision. I just ask you to wait, until your brains are at that stage of development. If it's something you feel like you have to do, even waiting till 18 can make a difference in development, and even better, waiting until you're 21, okay? So again, not coming in here lecturing you, but just know what's going in your body. I don't know if we have time for questions.
We're out at 59.
Oh, 50.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
so we have time.
Cool. Okay. So does that kind of make sense too? It's just messing with your brain at this age. It can lead to things like addiction or just throwing off some of those chemicals. So where was I? So then I could do, I think, another slide. What are they doing?
They work out next door.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rhinos.
Zumba, I know rhinos is what it
Seems kind of fun. Alright.
It's not.
Okay. So
It
nicotine.
is.
So we do
Oh, but it
know,
is.
what do we know about nicotine for sure?
Releases dopamine in the brain.
What else is nicotine?
Cancer.
Poison.
It's addictive, right? We know that it's addicting. So we know that it rewires and changes the brain, so the dopamine you were talking about. It can induce fight or flight in your heart. Does anyone know what fight or flight is? What is fight or flight?
It's like Is your body telling you to stop doing it? It's like your heart starts beating faster.
Your heart does start beating faster, and it's usually like in the face of danger. When you think you're in a dangerous situation, life or death, some people will fight and some people will run. Okay? So some people will freeze. I do freeze. Mine is freeze. So basically your body's reflex when it's in that survival mode. So nicotine will make you feel like you're in fight or flight because your heartbeat is kind of increasing, okay? Trouble breathing, damage to the lungs, we know that about smoking, right? Increased acid reflux. Does anyone get heartburn in here? Has anyone ever had heartburn in here before?
I promise I don't smoke.
What does it feel like?
Feels like it hurt.
I don't know.
It's like just a pain. Like,
Burn?
It sucks, right? It sucks. Yeah, it's like a pretty sucky feeling. Yeah, the acid of your stomach basically feels like it's coming back up. So that is also the effects nicotine has on the body. Okay, so it's not just that it's addicting; it has other effects on the body as well. So one more slide, I promise. So this is what the Juul tells us is in there, chemical wise. Okay, so in that little pod we talked about, this is all that's in there. Yeah. Do I know what these things are? No, to be real with you, I don't.
Wow,
But
that's a
people
lot.
are smoking it, right? So, like we
Wow.
said, I don't know if it was this class or the last class. So there have been 47 deaths nationwide because of vaping. It's mostly vaping THC though. They're trying to see which chemical's causing it. They think it's vitamin E acetate. Now, vitamin E is not dangerous on its own, but some things are not meant to be inhaled. So some things in these products, they're not harmful on its own, but when you inhale them, they are. Does that make sense too? So because they're new, you know, the company, whoever, they put all these chemicals and they're not knowing what it was going to do to people. And then now we're seeing a whole new type of pneumonia that these people are getting. The youngest person that has died of vaping-related illness is 13 years old. Yeah, so I'm like, how long was that kid even smoking, you know? So I'm not saying that if you do it, it means that you're gonna get pneumonia and die. I'm not saying that, but just know that there are health effects. We don't know them. That's the thing. That's the scary part. It's so new that we don't know the long term. So I'm gonna stop talking and you guys can start talking, okay? So if we have any questions or anything, we will take this time to do so. Any
Questions? You gotta turn them in anyways. Ask them.
Yes.
So, you know how you spray her?
Uh-huh.
How long would that take to get out of your lungs?
So good question, and I don't know if it does. I think it just builds
Wait,
up.
say the question again.
Huh?
Can you say it again?
Like say you were to smoke and it builds up in your lungs, like the stays in. How long does that take to go away?
So I think it continually builds up unless you stop or you do some type of like detox, which I don't know what you would do for, but I think stopping it like decreases that, and then your body starts to kind of clear it out. Okay. But I don't think it's like a natural release of all of.
But you have to stop.
And then again,
doing it.
everybody's body's different too, so I can't say with one person it'll do this with another. That was a really good question, though. I think I'm gonna give you candy.
Oh, candy for questions.
Yeah. And you were the first to ask the question. Okay.
But don't get on my camera. Another question. I love this.
All right.
After this class, you can.
Oh, that is a great question.
Turn around,
yes,
please.
there is- Are the effects
Wait, we can't. We didn't hear the question over here. What was it?
Are there any effects similar to like secondhand smoking, or you're just a bystander?
So that is something
Okay.
that is still under research too, but yes, because these chemicals are not meant to be inhaled by anybody really, so even if you're around it and you are breathing it,
Oh, turn your computer one, maybe.
okay? And it's like, the thing is, it's not as like noticeable because cigarettes have a very distinct smell, so you know if you're getting secondhand cigarette smoke. With these, you don't really have too much of that smell or the cloud, so it's difficult to know you're getting it, but yes, when those chemicals are in the air and being moved, then it's not good for you, yes.
Why do cigarettes smell so bad and vape though? Like the vape pens?
So they were made that way. They were made that way again so that you don't associate it with a regular cigarette, which is a good question too. So the flavorings, all that stuff, it's to make it more pleasant basically, right? Because you would rather smoke something that tastes and smells like that than a cigarette. And again, the fact that it's pretty much designed for young people, you can hide that smell, right? Like you could walk into class and you wouldn't smell like a cigarette. So yeah, yes.
Is smoking worse than vaping? And if you had to pick, which one would you prefer?
If I had to what vaping did is that it, like I said, it created new smokers that wouldn't have smoked. Cigarettes, it takes longer, it seems like, to kill somebody or harm somebody with these products. Like I said, a 13-year-old died, and it's like, how long have you been smoking? I would say neither, but I can't say which one is better for you. Or keep in mind, one cigarette does have 4,000 chemicals in it, whereas this is not nearly 4,000, but still, we don't know what that's going to do to you long term. So I can't really answer that. I don't know. I'd say they're both harmful, but the lesser of two evils, I don't know. Any other questions? No? Okay, you guys have been great today. Thank you. Nice audience.
Yeah, today.
What Taylor